Pat yourself on the back because you are right here, right now, for a reason. Welcome to the On Purpose podcast, where together we will empower ourselves and others to live lives with more passion and purpose. How you doing today, Jerrod?
Ah, you're back in person, my friend. How could I be better than that?
I know.
It's good to see you.
It feels kind of weird, I gotta say.
What's weird about it?
It's just one of those things to where you've been in a routine for so long. Like we used to be here every week, been away for 3 months and coming back, and it's like just these emotions, nostalgia. Nostalgia, that's what it's called, right?
It is, dude, and it's even when I went back to the gym after almost a month of being away, it's interesting to see how fast life moves on once you move on.
Yeah.
You know, because you remember it a certain way.
Right.
But it's moving.
Yeah. Change.
It's crazy. Yeah, you're looking good and tan, though.
Yeah,
Florida's
you too.
Treating you well. Dude, this is hard work, tan. Shirtless.
Saying I don't work hard, man?
Well, I'm just out in the sun all the time.
Yeah.
I literally just work all day, it seems like, but it's been good. Yeah. Learning a lot of stuff. Way more handyman shit than I ever used to know. I used to just be able to certified to carry heavy stuff and get out of the way. Now they actually let me use a power tool every now and then.
Dang, power tool Jerrod.
I don't know. That's still dangerous. But you know what's nowhere near me up there?
What?
A motherfucking sport coat.
Yeah, I bet not.
Yeah. Hey, where's your sport coat today? You didn't bring it on the road?
Packed in the suitcase, man.
I knew you'd have one.
Got one packed just in case. You never know. You never know.
It's fun to be back in person. We got a little fancy coffee.
Yeah, I got a root beer coffee, first one ever.
Root beer, and I went with some kind of Cuban super energy coffee.
Yeah, yours is good.
I'll be chasing Andrea around the house tonight, boy. Good. Yeah, well, it's great to be back, man. I'm excited. This will be a fun episode. Not only are we back together, but we got a fun guest that actually neither of us have met before.
Yeah, really excited to bring her on.
What do you got? I mean, it's kind of humbling that people's agents are reaching out to us now.
Yeah. She found us.
Yeah, we reviewed her story, thought she would have some good stuff to bring to our On Purpose community and help you guys with your purposeful journey and to share hers a little bit. So we're excited to bring her on.
Let's do it. All right, OPP community. I'm really excited to bring on a really amazing guest. One, because her agent reached out to us, she found us, and we have so much in common. She is a woman who is dedicated to helping others find their purpose, just like we are, and she's a fighter as well. She's a school psychologist, author, and life purpose coach. She helps women envision their dreams so that they can achieve them. And she actually has won one of the biggest fights that you can win. She survived the #1 genetic killer of children that left her in a wheelchair but did not limit the impact that she can have in the world. And I'm really excited to hear her story. So help me welcome Miss Sarah Manuel. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, we're blessed to have you. Honestly, I don't know that I know anybody else that has an agent.
Sorry. Out.
No, you're good. You got a dog in there?
Yeah, a kid.
Oh, a kid. Yeah, no worries. That happens in life. Yeah, we were pretty impressed that your agent found us. We didn't. Neither of us have agents.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found her through a community, and she has been great to finding people that are really on the same mission I am. So I'm so glad that she connected us.
Yeah, well, we greatly appreciate it, and we're blessed to have you, and we know that our community will learn so much from you today.
Yeah, I'm excited.
But before we get to all the heavy stuff, we got to warm you up, kind of like a workout. We don't want to just throw you right under the big weights. So first thing, Sarah, we got to know is you get one food for the rest of your life. What are you going to be eating?
So I'm torn between chocolate and asparagus.
That's a good combo. What about chocolate
I
asparagus?
never want them together, but yeah, I love asparagus, but I can't imagine never having chocolate again. So yeah, I don't know if I could. Yeah, maybe I can convince you to let me take two.
I think you just do chocolate covered asparagus and you're good to go.
Yeah, that could be interesting. I know there's an asparagus festival a couple hours away, and they do like asparagus ice cream, and that would make me nervous.
Interesting. I think you're the only guest to have ever answered either of those, actually. I don't think anyone's said chocolate, and I know nobody said asparagus.
Definitely nobody said asparagus.
Very cool, Sarah. So second question for you is, if you could be any superhero, you can make it up like Super Sarah or like Wonder Woman, and have any superpower, who would you be and what's your superpower?
Well, my husband always calls me his Wonder Woman.
Oh, nice.
Just because I've gone through so much, and like he gets me like Wonder Woman t-shirts, and I have Wonder Woman cups, and I even have the Wonder Woman logo on the back of my wheelchair. So he definitely calls me his Wonder Woman. But I think my superpower would be to, I don't know, I think to see the good in people, no matter what crap they're going through right now, and I try to do that anyway, but sometimes it takes more, like you need more for some people. But I believe everyone has a good center, a good soul to start with. So I would like to try to just like laser beam to that part and, get all the prickly stuff out of the way.
I love that. Yeah, because I believe that too. But sometimes you're absolutely right. Sometimes it can be hard with certain people, whether that's because they're just so shelled up, not being vulnerable enough to really see that goodness inside, or just because some people can just be really abrasive. So I love that goodness laser beam.
Yeah, that's similar to what Courtney had. Finding the greatness. I think that's probably why you've had the success you've had in your life, is you are so much seeking to help others.
Yeah, for sure. 'Cause it definitely, I know I've needed it to see the goodness of myself and the goodness and the worth of myself. So to be able to see that in other people and just kind of get through the abrasiveness or the prickly outside that I think sometimes people have because it's a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
It's definitely would be awesome.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, final warm-up question for you, Sarah. Reading is a big part of our community, so we like to share the books that we're all reading so we can learn from each other. So what favorite book, and what are you currently reading?
I am currently reading Intentional Living by John Maxwell.
Okay.
That's a great book that just kind of gets you outside of yourself and think about the bigger purpose. And then there was a book I read recently called Go for No. And it's like a book on sales, but what I really liked about it is that it totally flipped conventional wisdom on its head. And instead of like what he says is, typically in sales, you would go until you get a certain number of yeses. Well, he says you should go until you get a certain number of no's. And however many yeses come between now and then, that's just like gravy. But so if you get 3 yeses in a day, you're not going to try as hard to get any more the rest of the week because you're doing pretty good. But if the goal is 20 no's in a week, you're going to, even if you got the 3 yeses in the first day, you still have to go until you get 20 no's. So it just takes something that is very conventional and flips it, which I really love to do with all my mindset stuff. Like an example of how I like to do that in my personal life is most women, by the time they get to my age, they're like, I'm not telling you how old I am. But for me, it's like, nope, I'm 44, I'm almost 45. I am proud because these were not years I was supposed to get. Mm-hmm. So I like to, that's not typically the response you would get from somebody, but I like to kind of shift my mindset to where am open to that. And that book just kind of embraced it and showed me another way to shift my mindset too.
Yeah. Well, we're definitely fans of breaking the status quo here, and that's it's really refreshing when someone comes forth and does something a little bit unconventional. So, great book recommendation. You said that was Go for Now. Do you remember the
Go for No? I thought you read that.
Go for No. No, I haven't read that.
Maybe me and Andrea read it. I know I've read it because it's a sales book, but it basically says that you're not trying to avoid talking to people or pitching your product because you're afraid of no. Right. You actually make no your goal, right? Which means that you're actually getting out and hustling. So you're flipping, because most people, Sarah, maybe let me know what you think on this, but most people don't talk about themselves or share their story or share their product because they're afraid somebody's going to tell them no to the product, or no, I'm not interested in your story. Mm-hmm. So what he's saying is that holds you back from really going. So by not being afraid of no, but making no actually your goal, you embrace that, which means then in flip side, you get way more yeses because you're talking to more people.
I like it. Who is the author of that one?
Eric Worre, I believe, Worre, if I'm not mistaken.
Cool.
Yeah, I think Andrea read that back early in her sales days, and we read it together. So
nice.
Well, I love your books and stuff, Sarah, and I'm interested in something you said there that, you know, you're coming up on 45 years old, and these are years you weren't supposed to get. I would love to start your story, if we could, back then. And how did you, obviously a little bit of history of what you were talking about there, and then when did you start developing this warrior fighter mentality to get you this far?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed around maybe a year old with spinal muscular atrophy. It's one of the 40 muscular dystrophy diseases, and like you mentioned, it's the #1 genetic killer of kids under 2. And I wasn't supposed to live past 4 or 5 years old. So what that means in my day-to-day life is I live my life in a wheelchair. I'm extremely weak, so like 1 pound of weight is very heavy for me. And then also the disease is progressive, so I'm stronger today than I will be in, say, 5 years from now. So I really had a huge advantage because I grew up in a small town, and I was the only one of my age at all in a wheelchair. So there was never any talk or discussion that I wouldn't be able to go to school. So this was like in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, when there wasn't a lot of inclusion. But in my town, it wasn't even considered that I would go anywhere but our local school, because my family's been there for generations, and it was just, well, of course Sarah was going to go to school with us. And because the town is so small, everybody has to do everything for anything to work. So, like, for an example, in junior high, when the girls would that's when they start to play sports around here. I couldn't play volleyball, but I could keep score. And then in high school, I wanted to be a cheerleader, but I couldn't do that, but I could be the mascot. So I was really good at finding my entry point and participating in the way that I could participate.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So you were diagnosed at 1, and you said weren't even supposed to live to 5 years old.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what do you think was some of the reasons of why you beat those odds?
Well, I think for one, the doctors were wrong. They thought I had a more severe case of my disease than I did. But in terms of just the day-to-day, my parents I can remember thinking back now, and they would always tell me, can't means you don't want to. And it wasn't like they were shaming me of my, physical difficulty, but they were challenging me to think creatively and problem solve. And if there's something you want to do, how are you going to do it? Because if you can't figure out a way, that means you didn't really want it hard enough. So you can figure this out if you really want something. So I think I just kind of always took that perspective of, okay, I want to do XYZ. How am I going to do it? It wasn't like, well, I can't do that because I'm in a wheelchair. It was like, how am I going to do that?
I love that. So there was no sitting back and putting limits on yourself. You were going to challenge all the limits. And I love what you said there, that can't means you don't want to, because that's so true in all aspects of our life. When we start saying we can't do something, or we can't achieve this, we can't have this dream anymore, you're absolutely right, Sarah. It means we're really, most of the time, what we're saying is we're not willing to work for it. Or like you said, to get creative, to find how I could be included. And I love the fact that your community embraced you as you were, and that you found ways to stay involved, because I think many of us in life, when we have a setback or we have something that maybe makes us different or a challenge, we unfortunately isolate ourselves. And we allow that to push us away from the very groups and, like you said, the very activities that allow you to thrive. So I think that was amazing that you stayed involved. So through high school, you were the scorekeeper for volleyball, the mascot instead of a cheerleader. What other things were you involved in, and what really stood out to you that made you start realizing you had a story worth sharing, and that you kind of had a responsibility to share it with people to help inspire them?
Well, in high school, I did everything, Spanish club, yearbook, FFA, which for people who are not small town people is Future Farmers of America.
Yeah.
I took rabbits. I like most people would have taken like a pig or a lamb to fair. I took rabbits because I could handle them better.
Sure.
So, I was just always finding ways to do things. And I think it's like what you said about being isolated is so key, especially for people with disabilities, because the world is not built for us. So you're constantly having to figure out ways to be visible, because I can like go anywhere. And, it occurred to me when I was in college, and there would always be that area where people are trying to pass things out to you to sell you stuff or whatever. They never stop to talk to me. Like, it's like I'm invisible. It's like, well, that's not right, because I have just as much money as anybody else. That spends just as well as anybody. Why are you choosing to not talk to me? And I think people are kind of nervous or scared about interacting with somebody with disabilities, even though 1 in 5 people have a disability. So it's very common, and it's really the only protected group that anybody can join at any time through life circumstance. And I think that maybe subconsciously kind of makes people a little nervous too, because it's certainly not considered normal or desirable to have a disability. And so there's like this invisible barrier between someone with a disability and the rest of the public. And when I started like noticing that, I just kind of got this I just kind of felt this need to speak up. And I tried to do this 7-8 years ago, but I knew I really didn't feel comfortable sharing a lot of my story that time and really being vulnerable. And I knew that in order to really share everything I had to share, I had to get really vulnerable and be really open with my story.
Well, we're so thankful that.
And for me, it was like this slow burn.
Yeah.
It's like this slow burn to where it just built up, and now I can't not share it. Like, I have to do this. I feel compelled.
Yeah, well, we love that you found the strength to step forward into your story, and that's one of the things we really stress for our community is we all have stories, and they're all worth sharing. And quite honestly, a lot of times there's somebody out there that needs to hear your story. And if we don't share it, how can we inspire them? So I'm blessed that you're at this stage in your life, and I can't wait to see the impact you create. I wanted to ask you, so you went to college, so you're on a fairly, what people would say is a typical track for for a teenager, you know, from high school to college. What was the one thing that really challenged your inner strength and really forced you to step forward even more so into this fight, not only for your life, but for who you were going to become?
Well, I used to feel really uncomfortable by being around other people with disabilities. I was like the queen of denial when it came to my own disability. Because I was in a small town, I was very isolated, and I could pretend I was like everybody else, even though there was like an obvious difference. And I was able, like, because I was able to find my entry point, I was, able to participate in everything I wanted to participate. So that just kind of fed my denial and my belief that there's nothing different about me. But when you're dealing with, day-to-day life, like I would call and make a reservation at a restaurant or hotel, and my parents would say, where is it wheelchair accessible? I'm like, I don't know. And I would have to call back and then, change plans or whatever, because it just was not in my brain. Like I did not think about it at all. And so when I would come across somebody else with a disability, it was like holding up a mirror, and I couldn't pretend that I was anything other than disabled. Like it just reflected it right back to me. And when I was talking to a friend one day, and she said, your disability isn't a mistake. You're not a mistake. I'm sure I heard that message before, but it really resonated with me when she said it. And I realized, maybe not in that moment, but after really processing it, that I'm not a mistake, and there's got to be a purpose behind my disability. And instead of running away from it, pretending that it didn't exist, I began to embrace it and celebrate it. And that's when I was able to make the complete 180-degree shift from being uncomfortable around other people with disabilities to really, now I work with kids with disabilities and serve them and their families. So it was through stopping the fight with myself and kind of admitting reality and finding the greater purpose to my difference that opened that door for me.
And how old were you when that conversation took place, and how good a friend was it that said that to you?
She's a pretty good friend, and I believe I was like in my 20s. It was after I graduated college, and was just kind of feeling lost. I wasn't doing work that felt really important or meaningful. And I just kind of felt lost, like, okay, well, I have these 2 college degrees and nothing to show for it, and just kind of disappointed with how life was going. It's like, what was the point of all that work? Why? And then we had that conversation, and things just kind of clicked.
Yeah, I love that. And we did an episode way back in the very beginning about your circle of 5 and the people you spend the most time with, and how critical that is, because they will tell you some stuff, something like that maybe you don't want to hear, and that maybe hurt your feelings initially or cause some defensiveness, but it led you to reflect and to see that you did have more to give and you had more to offer the world. So that's good. That in that, for our community, I just want you guys to understand, like, that circle of 5 is so critical. No matter where you're at in your stage of life, who is influencing you and who are you allowing to influence you?
Yeah, definitely. And I love your story about identifying as the queen of denial for a little bit, right? Because I think that most all of us do that at some point in our lives about something. Try and deny some sort of aspect of ourself that is true within us, that we might not be able to change. And I love how you shared that once you really started to love yourself and embrace who you are, that's when you really started to see, hey, I can help others through really being the queen of me, right? Really embracing who I am and embracing my disability, my differences. And that's where I'm really going to be able to tap into my true purpose and power. So thank you for saying that. And sharing that with us. I'm curious to know, because I heard you said that you started just like 7 or 8 years ago really started to feel the need to speak up? And you used the term like slow burn, like it was, you were feeling it more and more. Was there something that happened specifically 7 to 8 years ago that really lit up that slow burn, that really pushed you over the edge to start sharing your story?
I actually think the slow burn started like probably 13 years ago when I finished my master's and I began working as a school psychologist. I was working a 90% contract. So that means I was working 171 days out of the year. And I thought to myself, I'm literally working less than half the year. I've got to do something else, like to fill my time to contribute to the family. And I just started thinking about it and kind of sitting on it and thinking about it. And, to do anything, you have to take action. And so I took action like 7 or 8 years ago and put up like the first version of my website and that kind of thing. And then it just felt too uncomfortable. It's like, okay, I need to take a step back. Maybe this isn't right for me. And then I couldn't completely put it out of my head. And then when the closures happened with COVID last March, it's like, okay, some sort of switch flipped in my head. It's like, now's the time. I'm going to do this. And I just went all in.
That's incredible. And tell us a little bit about how have things been? How are you helping women envision their dreams so that they can visualize, see them, and then achieve them? Can you share a little bit about your process?
Yeah, well, it goes along the lines of my own process of when I was kind of embracing myself. Because like you said, I think there are aspects of ourselves that we either deny or we downplay because it doesn't fit in with our friend group or with society as a whole or with our definition of what we see for ourselves. But I think when you can first identify that and then accept it and learn to embrace it, that's where the gold of your purpose is. The experts always say, well, do what makes you happy. That's how you find your purpose. And I think that's complete garbage because, getting flowers sent to me makes me happy. But then if my boss wants to talk to me, I'm like, oh, well, there goes that happiness. Fleeting. Happiness is so fleeting. But what I was looking for was joy and fulfillment. And no matter what happens, like even when the boss calls me in, I still feel that joy because I know that the work I'm doing is fulfilling. And that's what I'm trying to teach other people. It's like, don't go for the momentary happiness. Look for the joy, look for the meaning and the purpose. And that's where you will find like the true meaning of life, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was looking at your Instagram, and I noticed that on one of your links that you have a specific 4-step process that you share with others. So is that first step really that looking at yourself and identifying? Is it more of like an identity first step that you teach?
It is, yeah. Yeah, because I think once you're able to really get to know yourself and feel like you know yourself, then you can be honest with yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And that is such a critical thing. I think a lot of people in the world are tricked through marketing and consumerism to think that happiness is external. I can buy it. I can chase it. I can be around it. And I completely agree with Sarah here that is garbage. That is all temporary. Yes, you may temporarily be happy with the purchase of this, temporarily happy with the purchase of that. Mm-hmm. But true happiness starts inside, right? And it starts with accepting with who you are. And one of the things that I love, and I think there's a big advantage, I think it's an advantage for people with different abilities, is that they are face to face with accepting who they are much earlier than many other people, right? Like one of our very first guest episode was Rustin Hughes. You might like that episode, Sarah. He was our first guest on, and he talked about how he was much more disabled when he had both of his legs because of his mindset and because of how he allowed himself to live, and that actually losing a leg tapped into his ability.
Absolutely. I feel I have so much more freedom than most of the able-bodied people that I know, because I know it's truly important. I'm surrounded by people who truly care about me and who see me for who I am, and not, and not for anything else. Like they can see past the chair, because I am far more than my wheelchair. Like, it is just a mode of transportation for me to do my life's work. That's all it is for me.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, it's a mode of transportation. It means I can get somewhere faster than you sometimes. Right? Now that's good. And I think that is one of the things I think we should change as society is the word disability. I don't know how you feel on that, Sarah. I
hate that word.
I think disability, it puts a connotation out there that people aren't capable, and like Rustin called it, it's a different ability. Right? I just have different abilities than you. And if we all like embrace that I have different abilities than you and Sarah has different abilities than us, then we're leaning into our strengths. Right? Which is psychological, but it's strength based instead of what don't I have? This is what do I have? What can I work with instead of focusing on what I can't work with?
Which
Absolutely. And I'm actually working on a program now called Don't Dismiss Your Ability.
Yes.
Because, first of all, I hate the word disability, because you talk about the things I can't do before you talk about the things that I can do. And I can do a whole lot more than the things that I can't do.
Absolutely.
And like you said, it's all about mindset. So this program would teach people that, your disability doesn't define you. It may set up guardrails on the road you can take, but you get to choose what road you go down. And it just learning that mindset and learning how to turn things on its head and, celebrate the things that most people wouldn't celebrate, and to just embrace that side of yourself. I love to use the example of like a student with a reading disability, like dyslexia. Most people, like if they were told that their child has dyslexia, they would be very upset and kind of freaked out. But if you look at NASA scientists, like 50% of them have dyslexia. 80% of the people at MIT have dyslexia, because their brains are wired in a way that allows for them to be amazing engineers. So just because you can't do one thing that most people think you need to do, doesn't mean the door is closed to every other opportunity.
Yeah, wow, I love that. Those are some amazing statistics. I did not know that. And I love that term, different ability, as well.
Huge.
Yeah, because it's completely true.
And that's something as a society we got to get better at, right? Like we focus on that a lot. And what Sarah was just saying there reminds me of that that cartoon that's out there, and it has the tree and it has all the animals around the tree, and it says I forget the gist is, if everybody has to do the same thing, the fish will never know how great he is because he can't climb a tree. Mm-hmm. But he's not meant to climb a tree. He's meant to be a great swimmer. Right. So, Sarah, talk to us about your book. I want to hear about that. Differences Are Dynamite. I think that's an awesome title. And now, if I'm not mistaken, you said it's a children's book.
Yes, it's a children's book where there's like 6 animal friends, and they start a club called the Dynamite Differences Club. And in order to be a member, you have to find your own difference and see the difference in other people. So instead of being embarrassed or ashamed of those differences, they're celebrated and encouraged and welcome.
I love that. And what gave you the idea for this book? When did you publish it?
I just published it in April. It's something I have been working on since grad school, because I had to come up with a project. I forget what the assignment was at that point, and I wrote it, and I had a student I was working with illustrate it. And I revised it several times over the years and had it professionally illustrated this spring. So it's been something that's been on my heart, and I just didn't do anything with it. And I'm like, no, I'm going to get that one knocked out too. We're going to do this. Like I said, I'm all in. So
How
That was part of it.
how hard was it for you to actually sit down and send the book out to be reviewed by editors and to know that once it got out, like it's out there forever? How hard was that?
Well, I self-published, so I avoided that part of it. But like just found that putting anything out to like the people that know me, it that's part of the reason why I kind of held myself back all those years ago, because I was just afraid of what they would say. Like, because
Yeah.
especially being in a small town, it's like, no, this is a hole you're supposed to fit in. Don't try to leave that hole. Don't try to be someone who we don't think you are. And I finally just decided to, not let people that I don't see very often or interact with very often dictate my future. I'm going to make my own decisions, and one of those is to kind of mute all those people and all those opinions.
Yeah, I love it. And by doing so, you've opened yourself up to new circles of people like us that we would have never met had you not had the courage to step out into your greatness.
Right.
But I will tell you that when I wrote my book, I had the whole manuscript done and everything, and just hitting the button to send it to my editor, because I self-published, but I still had an editor review it because I didn't trust myself on that. Like, I literally had it in the draft email probably for like a week. It took, I think I wrote the whole book, but it just took me the courage to actually send it out, because absolutely, Sarah, you're afraid of like a book's it's out there forever. And if I write the worst book ever, like what if my book is the one book in the history of the world that's the worst one ever? Right? You could never live it down. So good for you. How's the book doing?
It's doing okay. Yeah. I'm really been encouraged by the response. So that it's been fun. And like all the people that I was, putting on mute that I was afraid would be really judgmental, they're like the ones that want me to sign it. So it's
Love
been
it.
very encouraging.
And where can our community members buy the book if they're interested?
It's on Amazon.
All right. You can buy 2 books for one. You can get mine and Sarah's all at once.
There you go.
We should bundle it together.
We should bundle our books.
I love that. So Sarah, I'm curious to know, because I was reading your bio and I saw that you once again beat the odds that the doctors had for you when you were able to start your own family. Can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah. So it's interesting because you talk about your circle of 5. At the very core of my center is my husband, and he has always challenged me. And I remember when we met, he's like, "You can have kids." I'm like, "I probably can't have kids." He's like, "You can have kids." And so we started going to the doctors, and I mean, we didn't try until we were married like 9 years or so, because the doctors kept going back and forth of whether I should or whether I shouldn't. And we just finally kind of set all that aside and decided that our lives would be much more rich and fulfilled if we at least tried, and if we didn't leave this stone without being unturned. So the first month that we tried, I got pregnant, and it was the easiest pregnancy ever. And we were really concerned about how my lungs would do when I was pregnant, because that's a typical, able-bodied people have difficulty breathing sometimes when they're pregnant. And I was monitored very closely, had lots of lung functioning tests done, and my lungs were actually getting stronger as I went on. Normally, it's really hard for them to draw my blood because my veins are small and they don't come up to the surface much. That wasn't an issue when I was pregnant. We were hoping I could go 32 weeks because at that point, the baby's lungs would be developed enough to be able to make it. I worked through 35 weeks and I had him at 38 weeks.
Wow.
So it was an amazing experience. And I had this sense of calm come over me when I found out I was pregnant. And I just knew that the 2 of us would be okay. I knew that he would be okay and I would be okay. And I was just going to enjoy the experience. So, and that's what happened.
That's incredible, especially because you mentioned earlier that even a pound feels heavy for you, yet your body was still able to produce a human being, and as you said, have an easy pregnancy. So wow, congratulations! So what an incredible story.
Thanks.
And I'm curious, Sarah, how did you and your husband meet in the first place?
So take yourselves back to 1999.
Okay.
And if you remember at that time, chat rooms were kind of a scary place. That's where I met my husband.
Wow.
Yeah, so my parents thought he was an axe murderer because that's in chat rooms then. But yeah, that's how we met. We were in the chat room.
And how did the first date go?
Well, the first date was interesting because my mom was there because I was in a different city because I was going to go to law school out in Denver and he was living in Denver. And she was getting ready to leave. And she heard me on the phone talking to him. She's like, I'm going to meet him before I leave. So we went to lunch together. And I remember she made the comment like, well, you talk so much on the phone. Why can't you talk now with me here? It was good. It was, and then, I turned out I wasn't able to stay in Denver because the altitude made it extra hard for me to breathe. So I moved back to California where I grew up. And a couple months later, he moved out here, and we will be married 20 years and just on July 21st. So it's right around the corner. So it worked.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. And so, who's the baseball fan in the family?
That is my husband. He grew up in Baltimore and is baseball diehard, but I also love baseball.
All right, I see Cal Ripken up there over your shoulder. Anybody that has a Cal Ripken Jr. picture is good in my book.
Dang, you can see who that is? Wow.
Oh, yeah. I grew up in Maryland, too. Cal Ripken Jr. was a superstar for us.
That's some good recognition there.
Yeah, I've been looking at it the whole time. That was when he broke the Ironman streak.
Oh, I have no idea what you're talking about.
So much history to learn. All right, Sarah, as we get ready to wrap up for our community, give them 2 or 3 tips if they're sitting at home listening to this right now and they're struggling to get themselves to lean into their purpose or to even find their purpose. What would you tell them to do?
First, I would say kind of look at the part of yourself that you're scared to go to. What are you trying to pretend isn't there or downplay? And really kind of look at that and why are you downplaying that? Why are you pretending that isn't part of who you are? Because it was put there for a reason. And that could be, your eureka moment is when you kind of find that and celebrate that.
Well, that's a great one. Look at the part you're scared of.
That's so good.
Yeah,
or
yeah.
that you're trying to downplay, and why are you doing that? That's so good.
What would they do next?
Then I would say, see how you can actually embrace that side of yourself. Like, how can you make that part of yourself that instead of being scared of, that you can start to lean on and really kind of embrace. And then I would find some creative ways to use, how you can go from embracing to celebrate it. So for me, an example is, I use this in my book, like in the Differences Are Dynamite book, like there's a whole, in the story, there's a cat that has 6 paws. So instead of being all bummed out that he has 6 paws, he just has a mitten made to fit his unique hand. So how can you take that difference that, may stick out like a sore thumb to you, and you may not really enjoy or celebrate or even acknowledge, and use it to your advantage? How can you make it work with your life? How can you incorporate it into who you are?
I love it. Those are great tips.
Super great.
And where can our community connect with you and follow along on your journey, Sarah?
So you can go to my website, sarahmanuel.com. And I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. On Instagram, it's sarahmanuel35. And on Facebook, it's manuelsarah35.
Oh, nice. What's the 35 stand for? Is there a meaning to that number?
No, I think that was the year that I was like 35 years old when I set up an email address. So I just kind of use that for everything. Nothing big.
Oh, that's awesome. What do you got, Ollie? I hear you over there.
I really love your exercises, Sarah, there of looking at the part of yourself you're scared to go to or downplay and why you're doing that. So I'm just kind of reflecting on how our community is going to respond to this, because I think that's such a powerful thing, especially when not only when you're looking at it, but when you follow it up with that piece of first embracing and then celebrating. So I'm really excited to go to sarahmanuel.com and learn a little bit more about the Sarah Manuel purpose process.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for being here with our community today, Sarah. It was an honor to share this time with you, and thank you for having the courage to lean into your story and to step forward to share it so that people like us could meet each other and share purpose to those around the world looking for it.
Thank you so much for having me. I love to talk about purpose, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about it for a whole hour, and I don't have to bore my husband for that hour talking about it. So.
It's our pleasure. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Freaking awesome, huh?
She was amazing, man.
I loved it, man.
I thought she was fantastic.
What's your biggest takeaway from spending an hour with Miss Sarah Manuel?
Oh, her takeaway at the end, man. I love that she's like, look at that part of you that you're scared of or that you downplay. I love, because we all have that. We all have that or have had that.
No, I think everybody has it.
And it's like, oh, because I'm thinking about, even for me, like, ooh, what do I downplay sometimes, you know? And like, and where do I downplay that and why? So that was like my big one. Aside from her story, though, like her story was amazing. There was a lot of great parts of her story that I really enjoyed, but that piece of the scared downplay, that was the biggest takeaway for me.
Yeah,
what about for you?
I like when she said that her parents instilled it in her when she was young, that if she says she can't, she's really saying, I don't want to. Right? How many times do you hear people just say they can't, they're too busy, I can't this, I can't that, when really, like, if you replace that with like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
Would you do
that's
it?
so good too. Yeah.
It was awesome. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. It was amazing to have you on the community. And, man, we need your help, community members. We need you guys to step up and help us continue to reach and find people like Sarah. And the best way you can do that is get over to Patreon and subscribe to us and help support us. Ollie's already told you, if you're getting any value at all, go without a cup of coffee out for once a month and help push us to that next level. Because quite honestly, Sarah came to us through an agent, which means people are finding us.
Right.
So we need more people to find us.
Yeah. We got as low as $2 subscription. So if you're at least getting 50 cents of value per episode, hop on over to Patreon.
50 cents?
And join. Yeah, 50 cents per week.
Come on, Ollie. Come on, community, help us out. Let's get this thing going. We're excited. We got one, we're in person again. So that should let you know something's going on. And two, there's a lot of people that need purpose in their lives, and they need your stories to help them find it. So let's get this thing bigger. Let's continue to grow.
Thank you again, Sarah Manuel. Got a new Sarah Manuel fan over here. 2 new Sarah Manuel fans.
Yeah, Sarah Manuel 35 on Instagram. Give her a follow and help get her story out. And remember, team, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. We will see you all again next week.